So for those who haven't heard, Shane Wright was basically played, I think it was the first 7 games of the season for the Kraken, got scratched for 2 weeks to be eligible to be loaned to the AHL for a conditioning stint. And the only other option here was to send him back down to junior for the rest of the season, which I, let's face it, that was not the best move for his development. This probably is the best move right now. And I was talking, or excuse me, I was listening to a clip from Steve Dangle's podcast and how they were saying how this is such a flawed agreement between the NHL and the WHL, which I agree because, I mean, Shane Wright, he had like 1.5 points per game in the WHL. He's too good for that league. I need to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is too good for the WHL. But with that said, I do actually think he is in need of, some more development. I don't think he's an NHL player at this point, and it's going to be a very interesting decision to see, what the Kraken decide to do. Right, at the end of that 7-day conditioning loan, because he goes down to Coachella Valley, he plays in his first game, he scores a beautiful breakaway goal. So what are you going to do now, right? Are you going to send him back down to the WHL? Is he going to go back to juniors, or is he going to stay with the NHL club? Are you going to burn a year off his ELC? For me, if I'm the Kraken, I don't do that. I only burn a year off his ELC if he's very close to becoming an NHL player. And one game in Coachella Valley and one goal doesn't tell me that he's close. Just in my opinion. I don't think he should be back in juniors either. But I think the Kraken are between a rock and a hard place with how they handle the development of this player. So, I mean, good for him for right now. I hope he lights it up in that 7-day conditioning stint. But past that, I'm not really sure what the future holds, at least this season for Shane Wright.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out. And actually, for those of you who have been actually keeping up with the podcast for a long time, back when I had you, Ryan, and Justin on
Right.
this, so I was on Chirp and Chat with them this past Monday, and I went through all of the number 4 drafted players dating back to Cale Makar. And here's what you guys need to know. I actually did research. Cale Makar did not play regular season games the first 2 seasons after being drafted, but made his debut in the 2019 playoffs, which in effect burned an entry level year off his contract. 2018, it was, well, I'm already blanking on. This is bad. 28, who the hell was drafted? I usually know this stuff right off the top of my head. I don't know why I'm blanking so bad.
Is that that was the year after Heisher and Patrick, right?
Yes, okay. So it was
Um,
Brady Tkachuk who played right away for the Senators. 2019, it was can my dude, I have a group chat going off right now that is just absolutely annoying the hell out of me.
Byram went fourth in 2019.
Yes, he did not play right away, but he needed some development time, but he is currently on the Avalanche roster, and well, let's face it, he looks like a budding star on a still very good Avalanche team. 2020, oops, I accidentally looked up 2022. I'll bring up 2022.
2020 was Lucas Raymond.
2020 was Lucas Raymond, who did he
In the NHL. He played in the NHL at least last year.
okay, yeah, I'll double check his thing. And then 2021, it was ay ay ay. I should have kept all these tabs open.
12 points in 19 games for Lucas Raymond.
You want to know who's actually doing pretty good this year for Detroit? Dominic Kubalik.
Kubalik got
Ah, it was Luke Hughes in 2021, who still has yet to sign his entry level deal, number 4. And lastly, to round this off, 2020, it was no, not I hate Google. Like I love and hate Google. 2020, it was no, not Jake Sanderson. No, 20, fucking hell. You're right. It was Lucas Raymond. I'm sorry. It's too. I got barely any sleep and I'm just fucking okay. So 2017 Cale Makar, 2018 Brady Tkachuk played right away. 2019 Lucas Raymond, he did not play right away. He spent one season in development. 2021, it was Luke Hughes, who has yet to sign his entry level deal. And 2022, obviously, is Shane Wright. So, my take on this, it depends on the draft class and how actually ready a player is. And this can literally vary from year to year. I mean, you have the current reigning Norris winner, drafted fourth overall, who literally did not play in the NHL for two whole regular seasons. So it's literally, like I said also, and I've said this many times before, the draft is an educated crapshoot, and they're all lottery tickets.
Many of them, yes, I would agree with you. Many of them are lottery tickets indeed. And, I think there is a precedent with number four overall picks for sure. And I think it comes down to team need, right? I think the Seattle Kraken are a surprise, I guess you could say contender. I mean, they're second best in the Pacific Division. How long that lasts, I mean, we'll see. But does Shane Wright fit into their current plans to elevate them as a playoff team? No, not really. I mean, sticking a number four overall pick who has no NHL experience on the fourth line as you're making a playoff push is not beneficial for the team nor the player. And I think that there's no shame in going back for development. I mean, if you saw Cale Makar, I mean, he did the same thing, right, back in college. So, if Shane Wright goes back to the WHL, is he a little bit too good for that league? I guess you could say so, but it's not going to stunt his development by any means. And let's also remember, the reason why Shane Wright fell in the draft was because in juniors, he didn't really have that all that impressive of a season, last year. So I'd be very interested to see how he is now that he's played, in the AHL, in the NHL, how he's able to transition. Because if he goes back to the WHL and he dominates, and that's great for the Seattle Kraken. And you bring him back, then you maybe consider burning off a year of his ELC. But if he doesn't live up to that, then there's more development. So I think only time will tell. I think the 7-game conditioning alone will say a lot. But I think at the end of the day, if I had to make a prediction on it, I think that Seattle would end up sending him back to juniors instead of burning off a year of his ELC.
Interesting, interesting. I also heard something about Team Canada has games coming up after his conditioning stint, so I would assume that they're going to send him to Team Canada.
I would agree with that too. Yeah.
All right, and there's another player, another young player in sort of a similar situation, but also extremely different, and that's Nick Robertson with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is just I don't know what he is. I mean, is he's proven that he's not a full-time NHLer, but at the same time, like sending him down, he's kind of proved that he's above the AHL. So he's kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. What are your thoughts on Nick Robinson? Nick Robertson.
Yeah, he's like that. He's like that in between a AHL player and an NHL player. He's not good enough for the NHL, but he's too good for the AHL, right? And he is the brother of Jason Robertson, correct?
Yes.
So if you're in a family with somebody that good, there's obviously some hockey talent there, right? And this wouldn't be the first time that the Toronto Maple Leafs organization has failed at developing their young players. I mean, we've seen it throughout the league. Many players that have left Toronto and have had success in other places, and I think Nick Robertson is going to end up being one of them. Yeah, having him down with the Marlies doesn't do anything for him, doesn't do anything for the Maple Leafs. And when you look at this Leafs team, they could definitely use some life, in their bottom six. And, even if he's not producing, I don't really think that Nick Robertson would be any worse than what they've had. And if you look at some of their transactions over the last couple of days, Wayne Simmons was waived by the Maple Leafs, so that, opens up a spot. And if you're not opening up a spot by, waiving a veteran for a young player, then I'm not exactly sure what Kyle Dubas is doing. So that's just where I'm at with that. I hope he gets his opportunity. And hey, if he gets traded and that allows another team to jump on him, I would love that, especially as a Rangers fan. I mean, I'd love to have Nick Robertson, wouldn't you?
Honestly, with the current configuration of this team, yes, I would love to have Nick Robertson. Actually, Jesus.
And 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points in 11 games with an 11% shooting percentage. I mean,
That's not awful.
and he's got a +1. I know plus minus, is an overused stat, and I understand that, but that's still pretty decent. He's got 7 points in 27 games, but 5 of those 7 points have come in his last 11. So, you know, maybe things are trending upward.
I mean, he's not a bad player. It's just,
He's only
uh,
21 years old.
yeah, I
It's
mean, it's not
years
over.
Yeah, that fans and organizations, on the same level, just give up on players in their early 20s. I mean, come on. I mean, if Capo Caco is 25 or 26, or if Nick Robertson is 25, 26, and he's still not, a full-time NHL player, fine, label him a bust. But the guy's in his early 20s. Just give him some time. I cannot tell you how many Rangers it has taken them years to develop. Look how long it took Pavel Buchnevich to develop. You want to talk about a
Mm.
similar player to Capo Caco? How many years were we saying, oh my gosh, he's a third round pick. Let's just give up on this guy. He's never going to reach his full potential. Now he's a top six forward. How many times were we saying that about JT Miller, sending him back to the AHL? He scored almost 100 points last year with the Vancouver Canucks. So just the fact that fans just have so much impatience when it comes to young players really bothers me, whether it's on the Rangers side or the Maple Leaf side. Nick Robertson, Capo Caco, guys on that level, they're not busts. Give them time. Call me in 3 years and let me see where they're at. But for right now, just let them develop. And Caco's looked really good, by the way, over the last couple of games, might I add. So, just bothers me. Just a little bit of a tidbit I want to put in there.
Yeah, honestly, I would love to make this a whole thing about talking smack about the Maple Leafs, but I have a feeling we're going to have a much better time to do so later in the season.